Test, test. Can you guys hear me? Welcome in, welcome in. I can explain one with an hour and a half late, hopefully. Welcome in though. Hold on. It's gonna be a interesting stream. From that, eating the lunch, love it, welcome in. Here we go. Hi, Cash. Hi. Hold on. Welcome in, guys. Welcome in. I don't know, my mic is running really late. I'm really late. Not really late. I'm not late, but I'm not also early. So I'm coming. I think it's fascinating. I'm fasting until it's late. So yeah, we're reading this. Halfway. I'll turn that down. I think that's better. Is that better, Cash? I don't have my headphones in right now, so I wasn't out there. Check that. Welcome in. Welcome in. There we go, chat. There we go. Welcome in, guys. Welcome in. Happy, Friday. It's Friday. Today's Friday, yes. Today, we're doing something at least for me, it's very special. I'm voluntarily going to leak this. I'm going to leak this, guys. I'm actually going to read it. We're doing a little table read. I'll explain it. I've been working on it beforehand. That's why I was late, because I was in the middle of cooking, guys. I was literally in the middle of cooking the script. Like the actual script. Episode 2 is cooking with episode 2. Because I have the ideas. I also been cooking literally. This is my lunch. I haven't made lunch yet, so I swept up, made this, now I'm gonna eat it. We're not gonna eat it just yet. I need to work for it. But yes, I was working on a really interesting idea I had with the whole jokes thing and stuff. I've been thinking, for those unaware, so the idea of Kappa's Corner, or the show, the pilot, which I call, right, is, I'm blending information, like explaining what Jackbox is, or Mario Kart is, Mario Party, CNR3 hypothetically, explaining a game, a series, a topic. But it's not the main focus. We're not just reviewing it like a normal YouTuber. We're not as intense as Beta 64. But it's like my own spin on it. But usually the jokes, the things you need to know, are either in the beginning or the end. Like the opening or the close, right? After the actual main content. But in the middle of it is the content, the actual main substance in that sandwich. I guess, sandwiched in. The main content is the information, but it's more of a narrative, like a loose narrative, connected by the the bread of the sandwich. But the inside is actually more informative than a rest. Like if you want to know what this game is, you want the middle of it, right? But usually the middle of it, the jokes, the references, the things that visually keep you engaged, anyone can understand and pick up on them, right? You don't need to know anything like serialized or continuity. The continuity in this kind of series, I guess you could say the world building, is in the beginning or the end, or reference, but you can get the gist of it, right? Like any viewer can pick up any episode in theory and get the middle part. But if you're there, you want, like, people who want to rewatch videos, right? Or like want to get all the references, context, can rewatch it, and that's where they'll get rewarded, right? So let's say there's a reference there that, it just seems normal. It seems like the type of writing I do, but it still contributes what it does, right? But then you realize, holy shit, there's more to it than meets the eye. That's kind of what I'm saying. Is like I want to the references, the jokes, and the main that I'm trying to make are somewhat double layered or multiple layered, where it makes sense in the context. But if you take it out of context, or once you watch more episodes, you realize that I'm actually trying to kind of fuck with you. I'm trying to mess with you guys in some ways. And I'm cooking because I had a really, really insane idea for episode 2. Like, so it's not. 1 second, I got a phone call. I'm back. But yeah, as I was saying, Kappa's Corner talks about game, like any review, kind of online YouTube thing, right? But the goal is like in between. But with episode 2 especially, I've been cooking because there's ideas that I want to do, I want to experiment. And this whole thing is kind of like my way to experiment and conventional kind of take on this kind of format, right? I want to somewhat explain a game, but there's going to be somewhat of a narrative to it. It's like very loose in terms of like the opening and close, right? Now, Pilot here, the reason I'm explaining this right now is because Cash is here. Hi, Cash. Hi, Cash, friend. Great guy, person that works, gone to CNR and all that, right? This script might help with that context, and at any time, if anyone in chat needs questions, have feedback, anything like that, please let me know. This is very informal, and I do want to just do this for my own reference archive and for anyone here that might be interested in asking or suggesting stuff for me to try or all that. But like I said, this is the first episode here. While there is some stuff here that are in the final thing, there is a lot of stuff that also isn't in the final draft. Because mainly this is only like maximum 5 minutes of content here. While the premise is there, it's not actually the whole script because I expanded it and I fine-tuned it since. This isn't even the script I sent Cash last. This is just between the original one I sent Dev General and the one there's actually one before it. And then the one that's anyone that is feedback. So this is like a beta build of the script here. I'll explain if there are any questions at all. First, let me cook. Let me eat my food. Woo! So yeah. The way I'm gonna do this, guys, I'm not gonna show it to you right now because, well, I'm going to just read it. I'm gonna read it. I'll likely show it this version after I read it. You guys can anytime let me know what the questions, ideas, feedback, that kind of stuff. And then after the stream, you already have it, but SME fan, anyone that is in the team who wants the latest draft, I'm willing to send it over. And all I ask is if you have any feedback, suggestions, all that, just let me know, right? I'm obviously, that's all I really would ask for. But yeah, I don't know, as I said, how long I'm gonna go for it. I started really late compared to when I wanted to go live, which is usually at 2, right? And schedule below and all that. When I want to read this, we'll hang out, just chatting, that's Friday stream for here, you guys. So yeah, we're gonna hang out for a bit. Have the music back here and all that. I want to check sometime. Okay. So So yeah, guys, if you're still there in chat, welcome in. I hope you're doing. Alex Vito, welcome in. We're about to just read this bad boy. Of course, not very welcome in though, Alex Vito. Appreciate you stopping by. We're about to read this. We're about to read the pilot draft. This draft doesn't say out what I think it wins, but it should be labeled in the document. I believe this is from December 10th, 2024. This version of the draft is from mid 2024 or early 10th. Yeah, 10th early. That isn't good. All good. I'm excited for me. I really should get back into that, but I already, dude. But yeah, as I said, this is from the 10th, and the episode topic is the Jackbox Party Pack series. I cannot confirm nor deny this is the game that we're doing, but this is in the draft. The working title is, as I guys know, Kappa's Corner. I do know some of you guys in here wanted me to use Kappa's Corner with the corner being K, right? And I'm still considering that. But I'm kind of I'm not really sure. I'm on the fence about using a K in the corner because I know it's like a style choice, but I don't know. I don't really get the alliteration of it. That's me. If anyone in here can convince me to use Kappa's Corner with a K in the corner part, go for it. But I just don't get it. Like Kappa K, I just don't get that. I don't get alliterations. So if you guys can explain that to me, yeah, I'll use it. I'm not against it. But the title of the video is Kappa's Corner, Jackbox Party Packs, Monopoly's Long Lost Frenemy. I'm not really sold on that name, but that is the name that I'm currently using as the working title. The goal, I'm not gonna lie, that is, like, I can see Kappa's Keep more than Kappa Corner, Cash. So, the primary focus that, for those in here unaware, of this pilot, essentially, episode 1. I don't know, I just roll like that. So, the goal of this episode, Cash, but, so if you have any insight, but, for those unaware, the pilot episode here isn't meant necessarily to be perfect, right? It's not meant to successfully nail the format in one. The goal of this is to establish kind of the atmosphere of the video that I want to go for, and then the goal is to learn, expand, and fine-tune what that is, right? Like, so episode 1 would be pretty much getting everything down, but it's not going to perfectly do everything. We might miss some things and stuff, but it's like the minimum viable product. Cash, we love that term here. Minimum viable product. MVP, folks. MVP. This is the MVP. Woo! But yeah, the goal of this is to essentially explain. So I'm trying to not read this. It's to explain the surface level and experiences of the games. Each of these are more experiential, but there are in fact, right? Like, so it's to provide a lens to explain the games in the main section, explain what each game is, how each game works in this case. But it's very modular in that case, where it's like, explain this section, this game, explain, decently, right? But it's meant for a general audience, casual audience first. But people that want to rewatch or into specific topics like modding or DNR games, specific things that might be more niche, will be rewarded because they get the references that I'm going for. But these references are almost like converted, or like not dumbed down, but like they're more like casual friendly. You don't need to know what Trivia Beta Party is in particular to get the gist that I'm going in the context of this video. So in the context of the video, it's focused on to a beta party, right? For example, you only know it's a mod that's very niche, and I make a joke out of it, right? But it's not necessarily. You don't need to know it's a mod for Beta 64. It's a mod about this, or this, right? It's a mod, and it's proving a point of, yeah, people do some really insane stuff just to get their mod played on stream, or they just really like niche trivia about someone's entire life, right? It's like exaggerated. A lot of this humor is in kind of based in reality, where like, yes, I made mods like trivia beta party, or like we all have like a that game night where it doesn't pan out, or you have that friend that deliberately likes to ruin your life by ruining your game nights. They steal all your Monopoly money or whatever. But Kappa's Corner blows that to like 11 because it's kind of funny, right? It's like a cool. You don't get the context and you realize, oh shit, how does that even get away with that? Because, well, in Kappa's Corner, that is normal, right? It's like in universe, the logic of it is completely normal. For you might not get it because you're the audience, you're an outsider. But for Kappa, me, right? The persona I'm playing, and the other characters like Ben and Jet, or the judge, characters that will be in the script, for example. They all think this is normal because, well, logically, this is normal in their universe, or in the context of the stuff they do. Their friend group is consistent normal, right? And usually it's best not to question it because it's like, let's say an alien came to our world, or a time traveler from the Middle Ages came to our world. They wouldn't have any idea what's going on. But we know it because we're used to it. We've been in our own shoes. That's like Kappa's Corner. Like, I'm trying to make it a informative series, but you're like, I'm almost intentionally making it so like you're feeling how someone might be to a niche game, like, but in like a casual way, like a friendly way. It's like a narrative in that regard, right? Like all the jokes, anyone can get it, but it's framed like that where, yeah, I could see someone not getting this because yeah, but you're still learning from it, you're still getting your content from it. But if you're watching more than one, like, hey, we watch all these in order, maybe we'll get something. And you'll get something, you'll get a lot, you might get too much in fact. But that's like the joy, that's the thing I'm going for. I'm passionate, I want to do this. Yeah, welcome in, Morgana. All good. I started later too, and that's pretty because I got a slow start. I cooked in my second episode. I continued it. I got my fork and I cooked this. I cooked my lunch. Yeah, we're vibing. We're vibing. Yeah, we haven't even started yet, Morgana. I'm just trying to. So I was just mainly explaining context about this and how I've been interpreting how I'm writing so far. Cash and SME kind of will know more about this, right? Because I technically posted a really old draft in Dev Journal a while back, like last month. And Cash and I have been talking in DMs. But I've been trying to explain some context so people know, right, what's going on. And at any time I said that for those here, Alfredo, Cash, Morgana, if you have any questions, feedback, input, insights, anything like that, please let me know. I'll stop whatever I do and just answer, because this is very important. This is not the episode, right? So I do want to just sit down and explain it. I'll probably try doing it, but I'm not going to be on camera doing it, right? It's a table read where I'll explain it and try to, do it, but it's not like formal or serious. So, as I said, the gist of the video is to explain the surface level and provide experience of the game, but not strictly review it, right? So I'm not going to be saying like, in the beta build of, like beta 60, in the beta build of this happens, or the other way of the release build. Like, I'm more or less explaining it, but it seems like a casual conversation, like we do it in Saturday. We're on VR chat, right? But it's like the friendly kind of conversation. Friend group, game night vibes, kind of stuff. The general audience can get it, they'll be informed, but there's some mostly surface level jokes they'll get from the main content. But usually these double jokes have double meaning, right? That's not in this, but that's a good rule of thumb. Characters like Ben and Jeff are just me, but in different costumes. So if I put this over my head, no, I'm suddenly someone else. That's kind of the logic there, where if each persona is just me, mainly just because I have no one else I can do this, and I have to show it right. And I think it's good for me to do that. It's funny, and it's something people will get and stand out by saying, hey, that's Ben, but it's really just me without the glasses, it's like, it works. But they're like everyday people, right? So even if if it doesn't make sense for us, you'll get it as like you're in this universe. So specifically for the pilot though, a little curious. Pilot is just meant to set up the flow more or less than the actual in the foundation. And then so it's a flow and foundation. It's not going to be perfect. We're aware of that. We're just trying to make the product. So it's cool. And I thought I had something going with that, like main character talking, like it just kind of made itself up, and I'm really proud of it because like I feel like it made me. I got some really good ideas with it. They can run with it. Welcome to SMD fan. We're just starting. We're slowly getting through the script, getting started. As I said to Morgana, anyone out here, feel free to let me know any questions you may have. Also, really, I'm interested about that little project you got there. Everyone explain. But that's well, all good. We're all running a little late here. Slow day today. Like I said, I made food. I cooked with my episode 2 script. Pretty much this script isn't the final script, obviously. All good SMD fan. But the current script, the one that I think Cash has the latest one. Or there might be another one. But the current one pretty much is part of it is expanded on. It's more expanded than this version, like 5 minutes I think is Cash said, or the version I said. This is how it's shorter. But the goal is to have like 10 minutes, 12 minutes of content in the script. So, and I have a pretty good idea on how to make that work. The script won't obviously be like one-to-one, but I have an idea on how to do that with the visuals and the cold opening and the posting here. Right, so I'll try to explain as we go as well. There, as I mentioned here, it says the viewers do not need to know every episode in order. Like, it's not like a narrative continuity thing. Though, as I said, it is loosely continuity if you want to be rewarded. So, for instance, if you watch the pilot but don't watch any episode until, let's say, episode 12 for a random game, you don't need to know what happens between episodes for the game itself. Though, if you do watch each episode or multiple episodes in general, you get rewarded, right? So, let's say there's a joke in episode 1. It might be called back or referenced in a later episode. And it works in the context of that topic, right? But if you realize there's a whole feud about being banned from a state, and it suddenly just comes, and then you will realize, oh wait, this happened before. It's more rewarding, it's funnier, it calls, it's more and better in context. But you don't need to know it in that, it's like a double meaning though. I don't even know what music's playing. I just realized the music. I just realized I didn't have my headphones on. I just realized what you were saying though when I looked at the tag. Yeah, that song was about to say. Okay, good. We got better music, guys. This is gonna be really. No, but each episode, as I said, you don't need to watch it in order. So episode 1 is technically standalone to any other episode, right? But you don't need to, you know what I mean, guys. You don't need to watch one and two in order to get it. You don't need to watch the episode if you don't want to watch it because it's like the topic is uninteresting. You know, of course I want to make it interesting, but I get it. But it should, in theory, reward those that say, let's binge the entire season or series of like a show, right? You'll be rewarded for it, which I'm hoping helps, because I want to balance between, yeah, I'm doing my own thing, but I also don't want to just say, screw you, you won't understand anything that I'm saying, because I still want to explain a game and topic. So it's like, I gotta think about it. I'm trying to explain Jackbox games, but I also just don't want to tell them, yeah, this is what's going on, and it's just really to when and where. But I want to still not be like, that's Jackbox back there, but you don't see anything and you don't understand what the hell Jackbox is. There needs to be that balance between, I want the main content, the middle section of the content to make sense, be informative, explain what Jackbox is. But it's not going to be a review where it's saying, yes, it's 10 out of 10 IGN, or 0 out of 10 get on a freaking site for piss on the moon or some shit. But it's rather, I'm getting you the information, you get the food for thought, you get the tools you need for your explanation, and you get my own kind of sense of twisted comedy with it. Twisted up for debate and stuff. But it's like a narrative where you'll put the narrative is built off this, the topics of the video. But without further ado, welcome back, SMB fan. I guess I should read this. I should actually go through this. Alright, let's see. I want to double check this myself. I do need a... Oh, there's the one before it. Did it really try printing this? I might have just tried printing it. I might actually have printed something. Alright. So I guess without further ado, let's read this thing actually. So it's an interior hangout room. Pretty much the version right now is in the living room here. And during the daytime. Scene opens up to me, or Kappa, in a room facing two others. These others are, Kappa is shown looking through a book like this, before he's looking up, glancing up. Kappa here says, guys, we need to talk. After last game night, I don't think we can play Monopoly anymore. And then Ben is the one that is kind of more reserved. He's not as quirky or upbeat. He's more the guy that asks, why are we even doing this? Like, he's just like the guy that's just there for the ride. But he's not as, in Kappa here, Kappa, myself suppose, he's a little quirkier, but he's not as insane as the other guy. So Ben looks up seriously, looking at Kappa. But why is that? Why are we banned? Right? I don't think you can play Monopoly anymore. Why is that Ben asked? Kappa here says, because when Jeff tried banning us, no. So Kappa pretty much says, because when Jeff tried adopting Marvin Gardens, we got banned from the entire state of New Jersey. Cash, you know the joke. We love it here. We love it. Pretty much. And then I'll say, I don't exactly think it's a good thing to reiterate that. It's not a good thing to be banned from the entire state. I don't think being banned from New Jersey is a accomplishment you should pride yourself on, chess, for example, right? So pretty much that is setting up the conflict, the explain. Pretty much people, they had a game night, but because of something Jeff did, they got banned from New Jersey. They all got banned from the entire state for some reason. Well, and the reason seemingly was because Jeff tried to adopt a freaking Monopoly property. Jeff tries to explain by saying, I didn't mean to. That was unintentional. Ben nods silently to acknowledge that, yeah, Jeff kind of fucked up. Yeah, I cut him off though before he finishes. I didn't mean to, Jeff. No, we just can't afford that. Just no. Now, the reason why we're here is to figure out what to do. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about my alcohol again. No, but where were we? Ah, okay. But yeah, pretty much it says, you know, I hate this song. Why do I have this here? Why do I have that song so good? it's not good. I know it's Contesting Peach, but it's really not Contesting Peach. I don't know why I have that in my playlist. Or God, I had that song in for like an entire 2 years. It's pretty much just contrasting peaks from Senior 3. Like I lazily put SME MIDI of it, but I put the theme from my Wipeout prototype boss in it. Like I just thought it was the funniest shit ever, but really it kind of doesn't age well when you realize, yeah, it's just a MIDI swap of 2 MIDIs. Yeah, it's not exactly ideal, guys. That's why I always cringe at it when it happens. It was funny in the moment. Yeah, it was funny. It was funny. But yeah, pretty much, as I was saying, is no, we can't afford that rebuttal. Him saying just no. The real reason why we're here essentially is to figure out what to do. We need to find a replacement for this party, for the Monopoly, right? What are we gonna play instead? And then I'll say it in like a ironic sense. It's not like it's not like a box of party games that's just gonna fly into our room. Coincidentally, the code opening ends, and then the main content happens because it's implied that box of party games is Jackbox, and then the cut shot happens to the Jackbox party game. Our first one specifically booting up. This transitions from the opening, get the code opening, to the main video. This is where it's just me. No, the personas, or that's what I call them in the scripts. Personas, not actually Persona 5 personas, but like personas are like characters, but they're all me, right? They're like in-universe characters that I play, right? So pretty much in the beginning and the end of videos, that's where they will be, and then the main video is just me in a casual setting, like behind, like in front of this closet. Or more likely a green screen with somebody behind it. Introduction shot widens with a widened shot to the usual main room, that closet, where Kappa turns around and I formally face the camera. I say something like, this is my plan, at least I haven't formally decided if I wanted this, but I'm gonna say a phrase, like a catchphrase. Hello folks, my name is Kappa. And today we're going to be tackling the Jackbox Party Pack series, like the topic of the video, established. I'll make a little remark saying, it's a series of party games that you use your phones, and then some kind of joke. So in this case, it's that series of party games that you can use your phones, or if you're both like me, use your Nintendo 3DS. A very impractical means to play your games, but it technically can play Jackbox games. If you really want. So it'll pretty much be like I'll throw the 3DS and then I throw it pretty much in principle works with Jackbox. Technically, it does work with Jackbox, but it doesn't really work anywhere either. So it's more used for comedic effect and practicality as the cut. So pretty much I show it. It hangs on the launch pad comedically. And then I'll say in response, you're always bringing your 3DS to be the life of the party, meaning like, I just saying like, I think it's cool, it's normal for me to do this, but purely in, people at home might think, the hell, dude? It's like, but it's kind of like framed like oblivious, he thinks that. Then after that, there's footage of the games actually on the screen. It's like between real footage like, you know, me explaining it like this, hi guys, that kind of stuff, and the footage itself, which I'll take on my own. Of course, I have footage. So I explain it through this footage. Jetpack Themes has been, you know, the general summary. Jetpack Themes have been releasing each one of their packs since 2014 with their original. Now every pack typically has 4 of these new games, with one of them coming back. Now I'll make a remark saying, if you don't exactly know who Jack is, tell that to my tax auditor. But if you don't know the game, well, let's go over some of the main ones that you may know. Pretty much, give or take. Let's go over some of the staples, as I specifically said. First up, this goes into like the specific modular kind of sections that I have. So the first one is Quiplash, like the Quiplash games, like you know Quiplash, the one where you get 2 prompts. I'll explain it going into depth. Pretty much though right now it's more of a summary, but the plan is I'll go through each. I kind of like the gameplay loop where like I explain the like summary, but then I'll go into how each round works, how each game might have been different. So in Quiplash 1, it might have just been simple gameplay rules, and then how does Quiplash XL, like Quiplash 2, Quiplash 3, how does all that, you know, contribute to the actual game experience? Does it ruin it necessarily? But really, it's all subjective. So meaning that I won't just say, oh yeah, this actually did this because of this, but rather than just kind of explain it like, you get 2 prompts, yeah, you might get a bad joke because of it. Yeah, Alex, there we go. Is that better? Hopefully that works better. Cool. You want me to if you need me to reread anything, I think people let me know. Pretty much the Quiplash here. Content in Quiplash here is the gist is I'll go over the main game series itself, right? Like Quiplash, all the Quiplash games. And then the premise of Quiplash is always the same. You'll get a prompt and 2 people have to put something in response. Now, it's pretty much what I say here is originally a standalone game, but later introduced in the packs with context of the theme, right? It's Quiplash XL, meaning it was originally a standalone game in pack 2, Java pack 2, right? Quiplash is that staple writing game that you come to find in these packs, right? They're a good way to reference. You get a prompt like what time is it, and then in response the players can do whatever they want, because Jackbox won't just ban you for putting whatever, you know. The general and straightforward comparison explanation of what the game is, right? Now, here's where I put my kind of writing in. I'll usually put allegories, comparisons. Pretty much right here I say the gimmick works surprisingly well as long as you're fine with using the toilet humor. And then I'll say something very cringe immediately and say, no, I won't say I have wrist. And it gets cut off. This isn't, as I said, the final draft, but I can already tell you that draft I sent cached and I sent in the ab latest it doesn't cut it, but it makes it not so blatantly obvious that I say that. I made it more. I explained more of it pretty much. But pretty much the idea here is it will pretty much blend, like the comedy here isn't outright, you need to know the context. Because in between it there's visuals that will usually literally show it on stream in a comedic way. Like there's a later bit here that talks about my 3DS again. But I'll try drawing it's for drawful where I'll draw on my 3DS, but it's with a very impactful memes or very stupid memes, admittedly, but it's all to explain that, yeah, I should have known. It's like a exaggerated way of showing off something. So, next is Fibbage in hits, right? So, generally we got Fibbage, it originally came on this pack, it originally came out as standalone, like the Quiplash, although it came out later with more prompts in Jetpack 1, with more, as So, and then I'll go with premise, similar like Quiplash, it's the same kind of situation. But you'll get a prompt as well. But then you have to make out a believable lie. Like Fibbage, right? You get a prompt and everyone has to figure out which one's the real one. And then I'll compare it to tax evasion for some reason. No, I know I put this, but I just think it's funny. Pretty much, it's like lying on your tax forms, but it's completely legal. And then I say, not like that I do that or anything, to like just add kind of flair to it. So these, like all three of these examples I have are pretty much summarized in the script because it's an older script. But the plan is I'll go over, since I always have multiple versions of games over the packs. The general format is to summarize what the game is, the premise, and then I'll go into each game of each pack that's in. So Quiplash, the original Quiplash, original Fibbage, and then explain what if there's any gimmicks like in Fibbage. Original Fibbage, there's nothing, right? But Fibbage usually is a fibbilizer or a, but not overwhelm the user. Pretty much it's the balance of, yeah, this changed how the game works, but you just need to know that, right? Like what you need to know, not like necessarily what you want to know, right? And then the last one I used is Strawful. Pretty much came out in the first party pack, but it didn't come out as a standalone game until after Strawful 2, right? And then pretty much saying, like the other games as well, it's the purest form, pure unadulterated drawing insanity. Because look, I know having no erasers is part of the fun, because technically in Drawful you don't get eraser. That's the whole premise of it, right? You draw in, if you draw badly, that's part of the funniness of it. Obviously, in Naughty Pack, it does have eraser for some explicit reason they added there, but I did not mention the Naughty Pack much in this script, and I probably won't for reasons. But pretty much one of my favorite jokes in here, at least, is, look, I know having no erasers is in the whole point, but you should have told me that when I tried drawing with a knife on my 3DS screen. So this kind of bit would visually be shown interchangeably, but the idea is either on my phone or my 3DS or some kind of device, instead of a stylus or my finger, I'll draw with a freaking knife. So I pretty much do a jabbing motion, but right before I actually hit the 3DS, it cuts back to the actual footage. Saying that I did it, but I won't actually, destroy my entire 3DS because of it. But it's exaggerated. But in theory, you shouldn't be drawing with your 3DS because shouldn't be drawing on the knife because, well, you don't have an eraser. You can't fix that when you don't have an eraser and Drawful. It's like, I think it's funny because it's out of nowhere, but I do think that kind of comedy, I like that kind of comedy myself. Whether or not that lands, that's the pilot and what you guys might think of it. But I do think that would be like an over the shot kind of thing, where you put the cameras above it and then that happens. But it won't ever break it, right? I won't ever actually, it's like just a kind of a visual iteration of the thing. Now, this next section after that is talking about the sequels of the pack in general, right? Like all 3D Murder Party you never mentioned. All the Quiplashes, it pretty much has a compilation of all the sequels getting stacked on the screen to illustrate how many sequels Jack just does. So all these games, so pretty much I'm talking about all these games seemingly have been good since they already got sequels. Pretty much I'm saying all the good games get sequels in the pack. They actually all got sequels in later packs, a lot of sequels and all other variations you can get. Games that aren't necessarily sequels because they're more gimmicky. So the screen fills up with games of later games like Fibbage XL, Fibbage 2, Fibbage 3, Fibbage 4, intentionally, I'm sure Murder Party 2. Long, I apparently typed a long in here. I don't know why I added long at the game, but it pretty much says Streamer Party 2, long, Quiplash XL, Quiplash 2, and then it ends on faking it all night long. Which if you guys aren't aware of, it's from the Jackbox Naughty Pack. And pretty much, it's a really good quality of life sequel, but you have to live with pretty much the whole sexualization that they thought would sell, when really you can just make the same content in your, it's already in like, so in Jocko 2, in Quiplash 2, like all the normal, like later years, you can just do custom prompts. Pretty much, the only thing the Naughty Pack, I didn't mention it explicitly, but for my own experience, the only thing the Naughty Pack really offers is forced sexual content and the graphics. But the graphics, in my opinion, aren't why you're playing Jackbox. You're playing Jackbox for the kind of screwed up experiences that you all have. So, yeah. But pretty much it ends on faking it all night long, but it's intentionally blurred because it's naughty. And I make a comment saying, yeah, that's the Naughty Pack writing up that's curious. Out of like, yeah, you guys get the gist. It's a lot of sequels, a lot of questionable variations. And I'll try to do the transition to the modded content. So look, some people have indeed found their happiest moments playing games like Faking It all night long, or playing Faking It in general, saying like how you can play Faking It in a ways that they probably didn't design it, like playing it over a text chat or a voice call in Discord. But I wouldn't say I applaud you for that, but these games just don't speak game night as they design them for real life settings, right? Some games just don't work out because they're not meant for it kind of environment. Now, people then go into the modding section by saying, now some people might have, some people say a game should be left untouched by people, right? Like adding on to this, but by its fans. But then I say, unfortunately, I did that anyways, and I introduced Chubby Beta Party in a mod that I pretty much explained at the surface level is a mod that I simply wanted to do because I wanted to know someone's life, or it's pretty much shockingly say trivia about this guy for barely any other context. I try to avoid deliberately saying like information that explains who Beta 64 or the mod actually is, because in reality it's just a niche mod that if I don't want them to know they don't have to know who Beta 64 or the reasons they get it. The goal here is to explain people make experiences do the weirdest niche means possible by sharing these mods. And the goal is to explain that. Give the people the information that, yeah, some people make the best memories, you might not get that. But you can have your own fair share of your screwy memories as well, right? Like, people have game nights that's subjective, right? So the goal here is to explain these mods at the service level as well. And admittedly, Tree Murder Party and Kappa aren't the best examples, but they're the ones that I made, and honestly, the best we got. So it says some people say a game should be left untouched by its fans, but unfortunately, I did that anyways. Enter Tree Beta Party, a mod I simply started by wanting to know some guy you might know for saying, and then here I'm not fully on board with it. I might redo the section briefly for this opening, but right now it says it literally inserts a voice clip of Beta 64 from the original Luigi's Mansion video, saying Luigi's Mansion is a rare Nintendo game nobody may have heard about. Grab your Lay's potato chip. The gimmick here, the bit here, is I'll actually be in like a theater-like environment, and like maybe like that bean deck over here is an off-screen, or in the living room or something, watching it, like the screen's off screen, I'm facing it there, and then I'll literally grab a bag of Lay's potato chips to eat them, right? Like to go with the bit, right? Not directly, but you get the gist. It's like, no one would do that unless you know who the hell this guy was. It's a cozy way to... Yeah. So then it enters footage of Trey Beta Party like any of the gameplay footages, and I'll literally explain. So this mod literally is Trey Murder Party again, but it's if you wanted to know everything about Beta 64. I'll say like YouTube, the Twitch, or I literally have a physical printed version of the trivia questions here, where I scroll down and some of them are real, and some of them are not real from trivia beta party, because that's for the effect of it I'm going for. So it says, so I'm looking through here and it says questions like real questions that we have been using. And there's questions that we didn't use from the mod that already been rehearsed. But pretty much it says questions like real questions like from beta lore, right? And then there's questions like are actually fake or cut from the spreadsheet. Like, can chat just make him do a Wii music video? Like, that's not a real question, but in theory it references something that proves its point. Where it's saying, like, yeah, why would you have that question on mod? I don't get what you're doing, but it kind of it's really niche, right? Doesn't make any sense. And all the options are just ironically yes, 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 or yes. There's no right or wrong answer. It just is yes, where you have no choice in the matter. It's bad game design 101. But it passes all those in a pretty decently fast moment where you probably won't get those unless you intentionally pause. So the question down here, it's placeholder, but the idea is it scrolls down and I'll read it. One of the questions that prove the point of the topic. So for this, it says, what caused the end of humanity in the Splatoon series? So you might not get that in context, that's kind of the point. So it literally say that, and I say, I know it's a deep cut. That's pretty much the entire mod brings. It's deep cuts in the mod. But let's not even get started with Kappa, which is a more obscure and absurd example, which is literally, what Kappa became. It's quite literally Scott the boat. Quite literally, Scott the was on a boat in a Bojangles during a hurricane. Literally, it's like that's literally the best way to explain it. It's joke boat, but it's like, I don't even mention it. It's literally Scott the was at a Bojangles during a hurricane, right? He's on a boat. He's not even a boat, It's pretty much, though, it's exaggerated. And all this is taken overly serious because, this is what you might be thinking if you're into this, but no one else gets it, right? So then this last section is talking about like the subjectiveness of the video, is pretty much acknowledging that not every pack is perfect. It's not necessarily job box. It's not necessarily everyone's gonna have the same experience, right? It's pretty much my food for thought. Explain more in detail, clarify as a good appetizer, and I'll try to give a rough explanation of the packs. But yeah, pretty much I'll end that with, that's all I have, and I close that main content with a Kappa's out kind of style outro. Pretty much that's what I do with the streams. And then that's where I'll pretty much do a credits kind of sequence. Not anything extreme. I don't even know if I'm going to use it yet. I haven't planned much. But the goal is it will be wearable, the music. Anything that I do need to credit, like sources and stuff. I do want to include sources where I use the actual stuff that I do, and they'll be there. I'm not sure I'm going to do descriptions and all that. But that's where all the credits will go. It's for like a little sequence in between the main content ending, where they'll end the episodes, and then the posting, which is a small bit of like the skin opening, but it connects the ending to the beginning of the next episode. So that's like the main kind of continuity where all episodes are technically loosely connected if you want to watch them in order, but you don't have to because they're very loose in that regard. And then the co-singer pretty much talked about this judge character, talking to him, explaining like, we didn't mean to do this, and then he gives you an ultimatum of that pretty much teases the next video. So I really must apologize for this, the issues earlier about Jeff and all that. But I must ask, is there any way we can, undo this ban from New Jersey? Judge casually, the judge is like the one where it's incompetent, but he's really serious about his role regardless of his actual status. So he's very upfront, but casual and confident somewhat. This is very straightforward, like everything else I've been in the script, but pretty much the gist of its part of the script is, well, have you considered walking it off? So in theory, you might not understand that, but then it cuts pretty much to me in a field, or to pretty much you'll get the implication that the next video is about personal trainer walking, pretty much a game that tracks your walking steps. The whole kind of thing about that is I'll explain the game, but I'll actually be walking throughout, or like the frames like that. So while the main content isn't necessarily the same thing as a skit where you need to get the context, the jokes in there are more, you get it, but you don't have to, right? But that's kind of the deal where this next episode is going to be where you'll be Kappa will be walking a lot of these different places, but he'll still be explaining the concept of personal trainer walking. In each of these videos pretty much is like that, where it starts with a skit, it connects to it loosely, but all the jokes can pretty much be related to the actual thing. They're not just there just because it's funny, but there's actually some context to the situation. And loosely, there's a sort of like layer of continuity, like the ban or the but usually it's more or less there to reward people, not necessarily to force people to know, right? And that's the script itself. So, like I said, it's very cool. I'm really glad with this right so far. It's really good with like the gist. Well, this is, as I said, not from the latest draft. This is from the 10th of December, 2024. Meaning the one that Cash has, the latest one that I have shared, is from much later. Well, not much later. Yeah, it's from like a month later. So, yeah. But that's the sketch. That's the concept of that. That's this version of it I've been just throwing around everywhere. So, if you guys need any clarification, anything like that, let me know. I'm just hanging out for a bit. Got company now, so. But really, I know there's some things I know like it's too short. That's why I haven't improved it. Some of the jokes don't land in the visual. You won't know unless you see it. And I sent Cash a very loose version of that. Right, but the goal here is to kind of iron that out. I know that SMB fan, a lot of you guys said the balance is there, but of course I'm glad there's like that writing there, and like the gist is good, but I gotta scale it up a little bit, right, for the pilot at least. So right now it's like 5 minutes. I want to make it like 10 minutes, and the goal is, as I said, the version of Cash has kind of the loose idea of that, where I'll pretty much go more in depth with those like modular sections of parts of the game. So for like Japbox, I'll be talking about state of the games. But for a game like a single game, so like a single game like Personal Trainer Walking, right? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like me and Cash were just saying, practice makes perfect. Got a net on the voice, he said. But more or less, for Japbox, since it's a series, I thought about separate games. But let's say there's a single game, right? I'll pretty much, it doesn't have to be games, but I'll talk about each of the modes or like different quirks it has, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be Quiplash, Japbox 1, or like a specific part of the game, but it's more or less themes around the game, or the quirks, or like relevance. Like the mods aren't necessarily a game in Japbox, but they're a thing that I think is quirk or worth talking about. So let's say Personal Trainer Walking, I talk about the online features, even though there's no online, or like I talk about how being in an area might actually be overkill. Like, so pretty much the idea, I'm not going to, the whole thing, and I'm going to say this very vague, is it's kind of like Desert Bus. You guys kind of influenced in that regard, where we were talking about Desert Bus, and I was thinking, why can't we just make this Desert Bus with walking? Like, that's pretty much what the loose idea is right now, and it's there, but it's pretty much more than just, it's not as directly related to Desert Bus. But the idea is I'm forced to walk this off, so if I stop walking, I won't be able to unban us from New Jersey, right? Also, SMB fan. SMB fan. Don't be stumping. Don't be stumping. So, I was talking. This was we were talking about I was talking this previous stream, right? About suggestions and stuff for those who are curious. So in voice cameos. So I made some rules in terms of how characters are, how formats work, and all that. So I guess I should clarify just out of this if you guys are curious. So right now, all the persona characters that I have, like that play myself but they're not me, are usually going to only be in the opening or the posting, right? They're not going to be in the main content. That's just me. But occasionally there's going to be some callbacks, references, gags that people can get. They will reference them, right? They'll reference, like, let's say Jeff is up to something during the main content that I reference, but he's not seen on screen or will say anything rebuttal. So the world feels more lived in, but you don't need to know that, right? So let's say, oh, last week Jeff reminded me of getting banned from a pizzeria. Like, he gets banned from stuff, right? But you don't need to know outside. Oh, yeah, he got banned because he did something related to the thing, right? You get to know the context of it without needing to know much more than that. But the idea with episode 2 is you're walking off this, walking and talking. Kappa is explaining that, trying to, not get you distracted by the whole, yeah, he's doing this because he has to get banned. If he doesn't, But he explains each mode of personal trainer walking, and he'll pretty much comment on pedometer games in general. Pretty much talking about how, I might be taking walking too seriously, but I still gotta do it. It's like how people might take like a walking kind of pedometer. People might get distracted and think the number on the pedometer is too insane, right? Or talking about how they're addicted with exercise or getting fit. There is one bit I'm very excited to do in that episode that's why it was being made. Actually, this idea was originally it's actually going to be in this, where I referenced something, and I think it's very experimental, but like it works really well for my kind of vision, because it's like there's a lot of context here that you won't get unless you are watching it in context, right? Like it might not make any sense out of context or be really, really weird. But that's kind of what I'm going for, where if you're watching the video, you'll get it, but you'll only get it like in the context of the video. So if you get sent like a video of a clip from this, from this moment, you might realize like, what the hell am I watching? But if you're also watching the video, you only know like, yeah, this makes sense for like a bit like he's doing where, oh, he almost got ran over by a car because he's walking in a straight line. But if you know other stuff, like you're watching more than one of his videos, this has happened before the previous bit, or other bits that's happened related to it later, or if you know other people that might be references, like the Beta Party is referencing Beta 64 very slightly, but if you don't know, you don't need to know Beta 64. But if you know Trivia Beta Party is a real mod that isn't in just being referenced there, you'll know more of the joke. You'll get rewarded for knowing more of the joke, but you don't need to know the joke, particularly right to get it. But in second, this is my fault. But technically, I've been referencing subtly Beta 64 and Scott the Wall stuff just in the background, and I've been brainstorming stuff. Let's just say that is a slightly recurring thing where I just reference things that you won't get, but if you know, you'll get rewarded. That's the main thing I'm going to say here. There's a lot of experimental stuff. I'm getting my foothold. I'm not expecting anyone to watch, but I personally want to experiment with this stuff, so I'm doing it like that, where I'll inform, explain a concept, but there's a lot of just sketch stuff there, right? So there's a particular thing with episode 2 that I'm wanting to do. I got episode 3 planned. At least the premise. I got the script for a second. It actually started, but the first one, so it's just gonna expand it. I got a couple ideas for later episodes. I got a rough idea for a hypothetical long-term kind of thing if that happens. I don't really know. The biggest issue here right now is I need to figure out how long I can make an episode in, like a range. I don't want to force myself to make an episode in a certain time frame, but I also don't want to just give myself too much time and then I procrastinate or decide to work on something else and then it overshadows it. So I'm thinking the first episode is I'm planning to release pretty much by February, early February, within the first week. There is an issue where next week I gotta go to the dentist and actually get tooth pulled. So there's a chance I won't be able to talk for a couple days there, and I can do other stuff, but like I won't actually be able to make footage. So that's been a big debate on my part if I should just wait for that or go back. But I'm trying to make footage and get the script at least done by then too. But the goal here is for me to make that done by the first week of February, and then each video after would be at least, I think around every month, like these will come up every month or every like a video will come out every month regardless of in some way. And each video would be around, the first video is going to be less 12 minutes, but I'm wanting to make a little, at least like around a 20-minute video per month with that context. Though obviously I need to refine the skill set. I need to get used to the foothold, explaining and all that. But those are my general, at least, goals. I have ideas on how to get there. I just need to actually do it, you know, and actually work towards it. This first episode, as I said, is to pretty much establish that, get that foothold, know what I want to do with my minimal style product, and all that. So, I'm excited. I'm glad you guys are pretty content with it yourselves. As I said, I don't know if you guys have any things you would recommend other than, you know, but I'm excited to blend there. As I said at the beginning of the stream, SMB fan, I don't think you were here, but I'm sitting over, I'll throw in, my plan is I'm going to throw in the latest draft in your DMs. If anyone here wants my latest draft that I sent to Cash with the script, I'll throw it your way, Morgana, if you want it. The only thing I ask is if you guys see anything that you wanna, if you can send me any feedback, you have any suggestions. I know you said there's no constructive stuff, but just anything that you might have, I would love to hear about. Right, I'll keep you guys updated with things like Cash, because I do like having that feedback, that perspective, of course. The goal right now is to do it by around early February. I have this first episode out, and then, you know, we'll go from there. I'm excited. I'm doing it more or less. I really have ideas on, like, you know, I like these games. I'm doing this, and all that. Yeah. I think that's gonna be a rough way to finish this. I do want to raid someone, but I really don't know who we should raid. I appreciate Morgana. I've been wanting to, like I've been on the road relative. I'll be honest, like, you guys know, and it's not like a big deal, it's not that the world I thought. But there is like a lack of me working in the or seeing our stuff because I've been focused on this, right? I've been still working on dreams, but I've just been on the back burner. But it's more or less because I do want to get this out by the end of the month if I can. Of course, there's things out of my control, like the dentist. Ideally, it would give me a fixed tooth though. But ideally, the way I'm framing it, it won't really matter to them. They won't see my red angles, and I won't care. It's just more of my ability to actually speak in that time frame. But I'm planning to try to get all the shots done by next Thursday, but I have no idea either, right? But the goal is early February because of that, right? But as I said, yeah. I thank you, Morgana. Like, I do still get on saying after, but my priorities, they have not been on that, right? So, I appreciate you understanding completely in that regard. I've been really passionate about this. Like, I'm really excited about this and the direction I'm going in. There's a lot of things I'm hoping that I'm doing in my own way. Like, I know I don't want to exactly, you know, use other people's ideas, right? But I'm also trying to get something that works, I'm happy about, but other people can actually get from as well But really, though, yeah, as I said, it's me wanting to share my take on it, right? But I'm really excited to see how that pans out. So, yeah. Now, I don't know who's live right now. If anyone here has any ideas on who we could raid, but I am going to try raiding someone. We might also just skip the raid. I don't know when Cash was gonna go live, if he was going live today or not. But if he was going live, we can work around that. That helps. Apparently his title is, I will rescue Olimar today, I will do it. That's a good title. Alright, that's cool. I'll try to hang on there then. I'm really excited on that, you know, I know what you're talking about, like a fan concept, right? So, yeah. There's of course, like the whole pilot thing, right? Yeah, that's fair enough. SMB in that regard. But the idea, of course, is the pilot, right? There's a lot of things that I'm trying to omit just because I want you guys, you know, to enjoy it as well, right? I don't want to spoil everything, but at the same time, it really helps having that feedback and that perspective. But there's going to be a lot of, like, there's going to be things in the second episode especially, or the onwards, and then visually, you guys probably won't really know until you watch the episode itself, right? Because those are, like, things that I want my own touch, right? My own flair. But I really do hope things work out, right? I'm really excited for Mirror, too. Like, I'm really excited for that to pan out as well. Like, Mirror's really cool. I'm excited for that. I really should eat my food. He's on that Mirror grind set, Morgana. He's no work, Mirror grind, stream, and sleep. Right. You know what I mean? It's like that Mirror grind set is wake up, Mirror, stream, dreams, stream something, and then go to bed. Or more Mirror more. I'm excited. I think you can. You're a godsend with audio and music. I know you get that. But you really are just like the audio guy. It's peak. It's fiction. Absolute cinema. Absolute cinema, guys. But I look for something here. Mirror grind set, yeah. I guess I will, before we forget, before I stop this, I do think I'm going to show you guys something. I think I'll show you guys this, well, because you're here. I'll show you the original draft that I still have of the pilot. So this is a earlier version of the pilot, and I haven't shared it with you guys, right? Because there's no real reason to. But there's a actual alternate version of the code opening that I do want to I'd be willing to share. And this is really different, except that like the topic's the same, but I force a lot more things into it. So I do want to show you guys this real quick. Here, let me go over here, and then I'll just show you guys the document. if that's actually gonna show you guys anything, but this is like the I need to show this. Pretty much, I'm gonna just share this real quick until Cash goes live. We'll rate them. This code opening is a little different. It's earlier, and it forces way more Wii music than I wanted in the pilot. I mean, there's a lot of people in here know me for Wii music on my YouTube. I was the Wii music modding guy for a lot of people. That's why I wanted to totally move on from that. And I know a lot of people in this chat thought, hey, this guy's gonna do Wii music for the pilot. No, I'm not doing that. It's like one of those recurring gags. It's like the new state band stuff, the band stuff. It's one of those gags. There's a lot of stuff that goes across episodes. But I didn't want Wii music to be a topic, a main theme of the series, because it's not just Rainbow Kappa. Skull isn't focused on the specific thing. It's meant to inform an audience. You don't need to know specifically any of the jokes or references. It helps. It elevates, doesn't force or replace anything. Right? You need to understand them. So this episode is similarly topic around Japax. It may be cut. I thought for the code opening it wouldn't be there yet, but I didn't. It has a version of the code opening that I wasn't even sure I could use the code opening. Cash was live. So pretty much I'm in front of my closet, I'm facing the closet instead of facing in front of it. That's where I turned around, that's where that concept came from. And then I'll say muttering myself, just establishing the shot. Wii music. Everybody tells me to let it go, but I don't let it go. The world isn't ready for Wii Music 2. Apparently I wanted to make a Wii Music joke, so I made Wii Music 2 a sequel back in. And one of the copies, flaws, because the whole closet would in theory be Wii Music. It would snap me out of my trance, and then I'll directly talk to the audience then. The code opening was much shorter, but it wasn't also planned the same way, right? So, and then this is the main content where this would be a more straightforward connected to code opening introduction where I was just doing a little reminiscing and all. But pretty much that's the alternate code opening that I wanted to show off real quick until Cash goes live. Cash is now on his calendar. And I appreciate everyone being here for the table read. Really do. Of course, we'll talk about it here and there before the pilot, but I wanted to at least somewhat informal explain for anyone that's curious. Of course, DMs are open for the team. Anyone that's in the community that I know, go ahead, ask me, DM me. And the team members, Morgana, at MSMB fan, anyone that wants a ping in the scene, of course, feel free. I'll send you the latest draft as long as all I ask is for you to read it over and give me any feedback if you can. Whenever. No rush, no worries. If you can. With that said, we're rating Cash. I appreciate everyone being here. Of course, I do need to let you guys know that I will be back tomorrow for not a usual schedule stream. It will be Mario Party 3. If you guys aren't aware, I do Mario Party 3 on Saturdays, sometimes every couple weeks, with the Milky Finishers and Epic Man. Though tomorrow we're all continuing that with also Milky Finishers, Epic Man, and Tater's channel, who is one of those people in both Milky Finishers and Till Hollow's 1 stream, so you might know them from the Till Hollow 1 War Service streams as well. But they're also more into both communities as well, like me. So we'll be back tomorrow. The time right now is a placeholder, but we'll be in the late afternoon. It'll be more like 5 or 6, 7 central there, like that kind of range. I'll update it as we know, but tomorrow we'll be live with that, and Monday we'll be back with some kind of game. I'm thinking probably Mega's or Fuka's Persona. I'm thinking Persona 3 mod. No, we'll be playing their Doom mod I think Monday at some point during the stream, but we'll be playing something else as well. So we'll be back Monday. I appreciate everyone being here, but until next time, Kappa's out. Bye, guys. Ah! I don't know. I was doing that for. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I thought it was funny.